where we are right now is what I want to describe it to you. Some things are just better said in metaphors. We are at what we could call a movement, but let me describe it to you this way. So if we were talking about a musical composition, um, a movement is like is a musical piece that can be performed on its own, but is also part of a larger composition. So see if you can follow me with this. So movements have their own form, they have their own key, they have their own mood, and sometimes their own complete resolution. So it's a piece within a larger composition. And we call it a movement because it transforms us as well. It transfers emotional energy, consciousness energy. It transforms our state of being. And that's where we get the expression where we say that the music moved us. So we also use that term movement to describe a major shift in culture, in civilization, and that's where we are at this time as well. So this current movement that we are in, which is a piece of history or a segment of time within a larger time, we can call it standalone because the things that were happening at one time are not. And this time that we're in right now seems to be like its own bubble in some ways. And so it might be helpful to look at the bigger picture, this bubble, this movement within a much larger composition, within a larger background of time, the bigger picture of what human beings are. So in this current movement, we could literally say that the constellations, the sky has shifted. The sky has a movement to another place in the sky, or so it is perceived from the earth. And that's where you certainly have heard by now of the Aquarian age or the Piscean age giving way to the Aquarian age. You may have heard me talk about the shift of the ages. There's many different ways to describe this time, and every culture has described it in a certain way. So we have now shifted from the ending of the Piscean age to the beginning of the Aquarian age. And those things don't go smoothly most of the time, all of the time. So there's a struggle, because there's a struggle when things are born. If you think about childbirth, and there's a struggle for the child to be born from the mother, to breathe on its own, and then to become its own being, to grow into what will be an adult that is like himself and in his own way. And so that is what is happening now as well. And I won't go into detail about that now, but if you are curious about it, I think that I have given a few talks that have been recorded, and they're probably on my YouTube channel. And there's other sources as well that talk about what that looks like. There are somewhat ways of measuring the stars to know when that happens. There's pretty common agreement about that being the case now. And there are huge movements that happen when that takes place. And if we're talking about these cycles that are approximately, give or take, 26,000 years, you can imagine that this little bubble that we're in right now, this little struggle that we're in of one older age dying, transforming in front of our eyes, carrying us with it, with a part of us doing the same. A part of us is dying and being reborn. And so it is a struggle at this time. And so we are living it, we are seeing it, we are part of it. And it is helpful to the degree that we can to look at the larger picture of this happening. These fathoms of time and how these great stories unfold is really larger than our ability to connect the dots and say, oh yeah, it's because of this and this. And oh yeah, I can see that and that makes sense. It does make sense in a larger scale, but it is difficult to embody and to see all that and to be that change at the same time. So when these great sweeping change happens, everything everything has to find a different place to be in the universe, a different way to be, a different way to describe itself or to even exist. And if it can't, well, the choices are evolve or devolve or transform. And so it seems like we might have a choice in it, but the choice is already made. It's a choiceless awareness. It's already happening. And we choose what has chosen us is the best way to look at that. It's happening all around us as we speak. Plant and animal life is transforming, is disappearing. Species are disappearing from the planet. Other species are emerging. We're only just beginning to discover about that. And we are part of that very same system. We are also one of the species upon the planet. It wouldn't do any good for us not to think of ourselves that way. And so we also, our human nature would like things to remain the same, or if it is going to change, we would like it to change in ways that are favorable to us, healthful to us. And we will see that now. So in the next 200 years, which is what I call the near distant future, we will see the face of the earth transform itself before our eyes. And in the next 50 years, which is pretty much the near future at this point, we will see humans, human beings, transform before our eyes as well. And that's a drop in the bucket in terms of time. We have these great ideas that evolution takes tens of thousands of millions of years for things to happen. But we are seeing now that it doesn't always go that way. There are events, there are cosmic events, celestial events, geologic events that change things very, very quickly. And we are in those times now. Civilizations rise when it's time for them to do so. They fall or disappear from the earth when it's time for them to do so as well. So we are looking at all of that right now. And if you see all of that, you can see why we feel stressed in our smaller selves. To be successful at this time, to be successful as human beings, and I'm not here speaking about the roles we play or in business, but to be in a successful life at this point, we need to have open-ended visions of what we see, of not plan too heavily, not to be too dependent on what way it's going to work out or what we were told or promised. Things are changing faster than our ability to get used to the changes. And the only key to that is adaptation, resilience. And to the degree that we can, as they've said forever, not to sweat the small stuff. And I know it's easier said than done, for myself included. But I say that because there's a lot of really big stuff that we need to be present and conscious for at this time. So the big picture is this great turning of the cosmic wheel. And we know this, and we've done this an infinite number of times before now. The earth, the universe is much older than what we think. We have an agreed upon number now, 4.5 billion years. And we think that number is accurate because science has told us that it is accurate and they have measured it accurately. But that is now, as of this reality, the reality that we are now. And as far as science has measured things now, that is what they tell us. And we believe it because we are, for the most part, not scientists. And we want to believe something. We like hard numbers. But if the reality were different, or if our instruments, our measures of time and space were different, and they will be different, those numbers will change. They will expand, they will contract as time does and as light does, because these things are not as constant as we would like to think that they are. I say this because before we can consider ourselves human beings, we are time beings. We measure ourselves by time. Our life is measured by what we do with our time in one human life. So then we go on and do something else, perhaps, if that is your structure of belief. So our lives are not just an expression of creativity or the roles that we play, but literally what we do or think or conceive of time. And even that is changing now. So again, ways in which we might feel stressed. So time then being a measure of consciousness, we could say, but it's not consistent. And so now it's speeding up. And it's speeding up, and we're having a hard time keeping up with it and what it's trying to show us. Our world is showing us, revealing us. There are clues around us all the time, every day. And sometimes we pay attention to them and sometimes not. Sometimes we want to look and say, oh, that's interesting. And other times we don't want to look. We think that it's too late to look, or we don't want to look in that direction, or we're going to let someone else do that. And so we are, in fact, living these small-ish lives, but at the same time, we are setting up our future. We are designing the universe in a way that's going to fit our future needs, not just now. And we want to get it right because we are creating the worlds that we are going to be living in. And that's really how to look at this time. What are we living? And are we going to want to live in that space, in those thoughts and those creations tomorrow, next year, or next life? So from that bigger picture, then we can start to look at the smaller picture. And the smaller picture, we're also then looking at time. And when we look at time from the smaller picture, we're not looking at these big expanses of time, of millions of years of evolution. We're looking at a life that is going faster than we imagined as the months and the years go by. And we're looking at time. We say time is running short. We say time is running out. And in the small picture, that's what it looks like and feels like. So we're not feeling expansive and huge in that area. And when we get too far into that time is running short and time is running out place, we sometimes say, well, it's too late already. Nothing matters. Everything's already been decided for us. Who cares? And I've been there, and you've been there. And it's important that we don't stay there, if at all possible, because we've come too far now to think that small or in such a limited way. And so if we can get ourselves out of that place and see that what we think and do does matter, that what we think and do does have an effect on everything from climate, weather patterns, our own emotional patterns, what resources we have now, and what will be available to us according to our thought. So it behooves us to think openly and creatively and to unlimit ourselves to the degree that we can.